Hi and welcome to the second edition of Shortcuts. I'm Carl Nassman. We're here at the historic Hearst Mining Building on the campus of UC Berkeley, and we've got 5 terrific stories for you. We start in Thailand. While working this summer for the Associated Press in Bangkok, producer Mark Altmans came across an incredible piece of video. It sparked a story about a man who survived the unthinkable and a region confronting issues of religion, insurgency, and identity.
ผมเจอครั้งนี้ครั้งแรกที่ว่าเป็นคาร์บอมจริงๆอย่างน้อยผมก็ต้องมีบาดเจ็บนั่นคืออย่างน้อยหรือถ้าอย่างมากก็คงถึงเสียชีวิตว่ามีรถยนต์ต้องสงสัยให้เจ้าหน้าที่อยู่ดีไปตรวจสอบผมก็เลยเข้าไปแต่งบอมสูตรเข้าไปก็เปิดประตูมันก็เลยเห็นวัตถุระเบิดวางอยู่ด้านฝั่งตรงข้ามคนขับด้านผู้โดยสารนะครับด้านหน้าตรงที่วางเท้า
Here in the south of Thailand, Muslim separatists are waging a fierce insurgency against the Thai state. Since 2004, more than 5,000 people have been killed in daily shootings and bombings. Thailand is nearly 95% Buddhist, but in the country's deep south, Buddhists are only a small minority, and they are one of the prime targets of the insurgents.
ตอนระเบิดผมไม่รู้ตัวเลยพอตึ้มผมรู้ตัวอย่างเดียวคือว่าผมล้มผมคิดว่าผมล้มแล้วก็สติมันก็วูบไปประมาณทัก 3-4 วินาทีมันเป็นงานที่เสี่ยงซึ่งน้อยคนที่จะเข้ามาอยู่ตรงจุดนี้ครับแต่ถึงจะเสี่ยงก็ต้องทำครับและโดยหน้าที่แล้วก็คิดว่าเพื่อความปลอดภัยของประชาชนในพื้นที่แล้วก็ทรัพย์สินของทุกอย่างที่มีอยู่
ตอนนี้ก็เป็นเกษตรกรเป็นชาวบ้านธรรมดาแหละอยู่ตรงนั้นมาตั้งแต่เกิดแล้วค่ะเป็นคนที่นั่นอยู่ลำบากเนาะไปกรีดยางไรก็ลำบากมาก่อนนี้ไปตอนตี 1ตีอะไรเขาก็ไปแล้วเดี๋ยวนี้ไม่ได้แล้วต้องไปตอนเช้าเขาจะไล่ที่เขาจะเอาพื้นที่ของเราเห็นไหมคนไทยพุทธเขาปลูกลองกองปลูกอะไรเยอะแยะกันหมดเขาก็เลยอยากได้เขาอยากไล่ที่เขาไม่อยากเราอยู่เมื่อก่อนนี้เราก็รักกันมากเนาะมีอะไรก็แบ่งปันกันเดี๋ยวนี้ไม่เหมือนเดิมแล้วคือไม่ไว้ใจซึ่งกันและกันแล้วแหละเขาก็ไม่ไว้ใจเราเราไม่ไว้ใจเขาแหละแต่เราไม่เคยคิดจะหนีนะไม่เคยเลยไม่เคยคิดจะไปไหน
สังเกตว่าภาคใต้นี่มันจะไม่เหมือนกับวัดในทั่วไปรู้สึกว่ามันไม่ค่อยจะมั่นใจไม่ค่อยจะมั่นใจว่าเราออกไปเนี่ยมันจะเป็นยังไงทั้งพระทั้งเนรแล้วที่นี่ถูกทำร้ายเกิดล่าสุดนี่ก็เมื่อตอนที่3 เดือนที่แล้วนะก็พระไม่บิณฑบาตเสร็จแล้วก็นอนละหมาดแล้วก็ทหารบาดเจ็บ4 คนแต่ถ้าหากว่าทหารไม่โดนแล้วพระโดนพระต้องตายแน่ๆเพราะว่านั้นมันหนัก
แล้วพระองค์นั้นยังเป็นพระไหมเลยสึก
เนี่ยสึกนะที่เดินอยู่ในที่นี้
บิณฑบาตปกติก็ราวๆ7 โมงกว่ามันสายแล้วตอนนั้นพอระเบิดตุ้มหันหลังวิ่งมันคนมาดึงมือแขนนี่หมุนดูแขนว่าแขนขาดเนี่ยมันแรงระเบิดมันแรงมันน่ากลัวกันทุกวัน ต้องใช้ความอดทนสูงทนอดกั้นไม่ว่าอะไรจะเกิดขึ้นก็ทำจิตใจหนักแน่นไว้ไปคิดอะไรมากบางทีก็เครียดเหมือนกันอยากฆ่าตัวตายเดี๋ยวบางทีก็ร้องไห้นอนร้องไห้คนเดียวเมื่อกี้ก็ร้องไห้มาในกุฏินอนร้องไห้
มันไม่มีพุทธกับมุสลิมแล้วในส่วนนี้เพราะว่าตรงนี้มันเป็นสถานที่ของวัดพุทธแต่ส่วนมากนักเรียนที่มาเรียนนี้ 80% หรือว่า80กว่าเปอร์เซ็นต์เนี่ยเป็นมุสลิมนะครับสมัยก่อนนั้นพ่อแม่ปู่ย่าตายายเรียนที่นี่มีความผูกพันกับที่นี่ไม่ผิดอะไรที่เขาจะส่งลูกหลานมาเรียนนะครับคงแนวร่วมในส่วนนั้นคงจะมันน่าจะมีแต่ว่าอาจจะมีน้อยไหมฮะที่ว่าเขาส่งลูกหลานมาแล้วตอบออกไปเป็นเสียงร้องของวัวเด็กๆและนั้นจำได้ไหมเราเป็นนักเรียนผมสอนดนตรีไทยผมอยากพาเด็กนักเรียนผมเนี่ยไปแสดงต่อหน้าพระพักตร์สมเด็จพระเทพให้ท่านได้ชมมั่งว่าเนี่ยใน3จังหวัดชายแดนภาคใต้นี่วิถีชีวิตความเป็นไทยนะครับของพี่น้องชาวไทยพุทธหรือว่าพี่น้องมุสลิมเนี่ยก็ไปอยู่แล้วเขามีตลอดอยู่แล้วลิเกฮูลูเนี่ยเขาไปตลอดแสดงตลอดที่คุณครูสอนเราวันก่อนนะครับพูดถึงการดื่มนมแล้วทำให้เป็นไงร่างกายแล้วเป็นไงแล้วใครเป็นคนสนับสนุนนมให้เรารัฐบาลนะครับมันมีในเพลง
I can say that the policy to win heart and mind of the people here is not effective and the human rights violation incident not decrease but it's always increasingly year by year.
In the town of Takbai, Thai soldiers and police turned their guns against hundreds of unarmed Muslim demonstrators. More than 1,000 Muslim men were detained. With their arms tied behind their backs, they were then loaded like stacks of wood into military trucks for a 5-hour drive to a detention camp. When they arrived, 78 men had died from suffocation.
The top issue in the heart of the people here is about justice and discrimination.
But it's more than just about abuses committed by the Thai state. Many Muslims here have also fallen victim to the insurgents. And because of that, Muslim support for the insurgency is mixed. Here in Thailand's deep south, most Muslims are caught between a state they distrust and insurgents they fear.
Lah ni masalah di antara KJL dengan kampung tu tengoknya masalah asing. Keberatan dalam KJL pemerintah dalam KJL dengan orang di antara Rusia dengan orang Melayu tu artinya tak sama. Sebab itulah masalah tindak care yang terjadi ia tak elok. Selama mana KJL hidup tak sama, yang ni tak sama berat, maka selama tu tak
มันจะมีอยู่สองฝ่ายคือไอ้ฝ่ายที่ว่ารับฟังศาสนาฝ่ายหนึ่งและอีกฝ่ายหนึ่งคือฝ่ายที่ว่าไม่รับฟังศาสนาแต่ฝ่ายที่ไม่รับฟังศาสนาเนี่ยมันจะมีมาก
Kejadian secara umum betul tu bukan masalah agama sangat. Cumanya tindak ke KJL terhadap rakyat tu tak kena pada tempat. Jadi ambil buat orang pelajar agama ataupun guru-guru yang mengajar agama sebagai kokan rai. Penjahat mana orang kata penjahat.
M79 จะมาตกตอนไหนหรือว่าจะมีมันมาวางระเบิดไว้ตอนไหนนะครับเพราะว่าเขาจ้องอยู่เขาจะเอาเราตอนไหนก็ไม่ทราบเนี่ยแต่ว่าที่สำคัญที่สุดก็คือชาวพุทธก็จะมีนี่ครับมีพระก็คือออกไปไหนก็จะแขวนพระ เห็นพระแล้วก็นึกถึงบุญคุณท่านว่าเราไม่ได้มาร้ายนะเราไม่ได้มาที่จะมาคิดที่จะมายิงใครมาหรือมาทำร้ายใคร เรามาเพื่อทำงานสอนเด็ก
ตอนนั้นยังไม่รู้สึกเพราะว่ามันเร็วมากรู้สึกสติมันวูบไปนิดนึงผมถึงจะลุกขึ้นมาแล้วก็สำรวจตัวเองว่าเอ้ยเราไม่ได้เป็นไรเราปลอดภัยแขนขายังอยู่ครบผมก็เดินออกมาแบบชูมือบอกไม่เป็นไรไม่เป็นไรแต่ถามว่าใครได้ยินไหมไม่มีใครได้ยินเพราะแค่บอกส่งสัญญาณให้เขารู้ผมชูแขนขึ้นมาครั้งนี้เป็นครั้งแรกที่ว่าใส่บอมสูตรแล้วทำงานแล้วมันระเบิดแล้วก็รอด
In an experimental approach to a serious story, Caroline Binns looks at the plight of the gay and lesbian community in Haiti in the aftermath of the 2010 earthquake. The war in Afghanistan is now more than 10 years old, and Marines are starting to train in a new way. It happens at Camp Pendleton, 50 miles north of San Diego, but it feels like a world away. It looks and sounds like a typical Afghan village. But these Marines are nowhere near Afghanistan. They're patrolling a multi-million-dollar recreation. Lance Corporal Derek Hicks is one of the Marines on patrol.
This is basically typical of a lot of villages in Afghanistan. We were deployed there last year, and there was a few towns that were similar to this that we were patrolling through, so it's very realistic.
The mock Afghan village is at the Camp Pendleton Marine Corps base outside of San Diego. Even from my vantage point above the action, the scene below seems real. The training facility is less than 2 years old. It's one of 3 mock villages on Marine Corps bases across the country. Hundreds of Marines pass through here every week before deploying to Afghanistan. One of them is Sergeant Christopher Roberts.
The first time you go on a patrol, you're going to be kind of just overwhelmed with all of the culture, the scenery, trying to figure out what's going on, how to deal with these people. If you don't go through something like this, you're doing it for the first time in Afghanistan, that's not a good day.
Marines here learn more than just combat. They're taking a crash course in Afghan culture.
We get all kinds of cultural awareness training, and it definitely plays a huge factor. You might want to wave at somebody or kind of point to a certain direction, but if we know that that's something that local area, they kind of look at that as an insult compared to what we would. We go through that training, so my guys are able to kind of stop themselves before they do it.
Their teachers are Afghan Americans, hired for a role only they can play.
They come up, try to shake your hand on patrol and stuff, try to offer you food and stuff, just like a typical Afghani. It's good training to have the role players out here because I think without them it'd kind of be pointless to be running the training.
Back when I was still a Marine, I wish I would have had this training because the only thing you use for opposing forces is another Marine wearing a t-shirt on his head or a Marine yelling, screaming, and kind of acting like a fool, so to speak, and you don't get that realism.
Dirk Lenz is a former Marine and the military training coordinator for Spec Pro Technical Services, one of dozens of private companies hiring role players for specialized military training.
The unit may request, it could be anything from Somalis, you could have Yemeni folks, you could have Afghans. It all depends on what the needs of the Marine Corps is, and then we will try to facilitate that as much as possible.
Just outside his office early in the morning, the Afghan role players start arriving for work. Ilyas Kazimi is one of nearly 500 Afghan role players on Spec Pro's payroll. Thousands more work for other companies nationwide. The war in Afghanistan created a steady stream of U.S.-based jobs for Afghan immigrants, especially here at Camp Pendleton. Role-playing is an important source of income for Afghan Americans, a community hit hard by the recession.
I was looking for work, as everybody else do, and this is the kind of job I heard that I can do because I speak many languages.
Sam Nawabi and other role players can make a few $100s a day working at the base.
It pays my bills. I'm the only person working at my house right now. My wife is new in the United States. She doesn't speak English. And I have over a year-old daughter.
But role-playing is more than just a paycheck. The break room is a meeting place for Afghans, where new and old cultures mix.
This is the elder generation that have, that culture is really, stuck to them from Afghanistan, and then there's the other ones that you have where they're blended in between, like the melting pot, or there's multiple. You got the young guys who hanging out, having fun.
We learn a lot more from each other, yes. Sitting down with your own Afghan people, speaking your language, we're getting together to start talking. It's actually, we're being ourselves, we're being ourselves, and we're kind of like mixed up. We're American and we're Afghan, we're American and we're Afghan.
The Afghan community is still figuring it out. What is our position in the American dream?
Hanif Moebi is the executive director of the San Diego chapter of CARE, the Council on American Islamic Relations. He says role-playing is a controversial job in the Afghan community.
Some feel that, yeah, I mean, this is a great thing to do. We're serving America and we're serving Afghanistan both at the same time. It's like hitting two birds with one stone. But at the same time, you have those who believe that, you know, this is not necessarily an honorable job because you're taking the side of, if we may, an oppressor.
I heard a few negative things. They said like selling yourself out.
Role players walk a thin line, especially in San Diego, a city with strong military ties. Discrimination against Afghans and other Muslims flared up after 9/11, when it was discovered that 2 of the 9/11 hijackers, none of them Afghan, lived here before the attacks.
I just questioned where, you know, like politically I would stand, or, you know, with my beliefs, where I would stand with it. Because, you know, one, I didn't know what the military was aiming for in, you know, Afghanistan. Two, I didn't know what exactly, you know, they wanted from us here. You know, I have roots both places. Yes, I was born here, so does but my parents were born there.
Now, a decade after the United States invaded Afghanistan, role players are still coming to terms with their ties to both countries.
Like, I was trying to do something, if you can see.
Outside the base, Ilyas is an art student studying graphic design.
This is actually another one. This is my peace tree.
His work is influenced by his dual identities.
At the roots of peace are war.
In a way, that's kind of what your job is a little bit, like during the day, right? It's like you're not going there to help people like become better killing machines.
No, definitely not, man. I mean, honestly, that's the only reason why I do it, is because at the end of the day, like, I can tell that these Marines are learning something.
Three years ago, this was a mock Iraqi village. But as that war wound down, the military built a new Afghan village. Iraqi role players were let go, and Afghans took their place.
I think the only thing that will change, obviously, is the type of role player, the type of culture that they may ask for. 3 years from now, we could be asking for, you know, Iranians. We could be asking for, you know, Koreans. Who knows?
For now, the training continues with Afghans. But Marine combat troops will start leaving Afghanistan next year, and virtually all troops will be gone by 2014. These days, it seems almost everyone has a smartphone or tablet, and we use apps for the small things, checking email, finding a coffee shop, or looking at the weather. But how about an app that can change a life? Christina Lopez has that story from North Carolina.
Come on, put your leg. Let's get in there. What you gonna do? Hold on.
When Victor Pauca was just 5 months old, his mother Teresa noticed something unusual about her son.
Victor loves to ride his tricycle.
Good job.
He was always so interactive and smiling and paying attention to everything we did and everything, so it didn't, you know, physically he seemed behind, but cognitively he seemed like he was just right there with us.
In March of 2008, at 2.5 years old, Victor was diagnosed with a rare genetic disorder known as Pitt-Hopkins syndrome. He was missing a gene, TCF4, that makes communication profoundly challenging.
It was very, very difficult to hear that Victor had something, you know, wrong with his genes. Although we knew that there was something wrong, it still is very difficult.
Despite Victor's diagnosis, his personality shines through.
We found out that the children with Pitt-Hopkins syndrome are very happy. That is, you know, one of the major characteristics is that, you know, no matter what conditions they might have, whether they walk or don't walk, if they eat or have a feeding tube, they're very happy children.
That happiness is shared with Victor's older sisters, Francesca and Sophia.
If you want to grow up to be a respectable pig, you must learn how to make a proper mess,
said Papa Pig. Mess up your room, put on some dirty clothes, and then you can go out and play, said Mama Pig.
When we first explained it to him, I told him that Victor was like Peter Pan in Never Never Land that would never have to grow up. That helped them understand kind of a perspective that, yes, it is sad for Victor, but there's some things that Victor will not have to worry about as he gets older too.
Personally, it was very difficult to you know, finally say he has this and this might be his limits. And I didn't didn't ever want to hear that.
So Pal Pauka, a computer science engineer, built an app to help his son communicate.
Do you want to turn the pumpkin off? Yes. You do? Okay, I'm going to let you.
He called it Verbal Victor.
I think we have another thing we can start.
It's a learning tool that's revolutionized the way he and those with cognitive disabilities connect with others around them.
15, 16, 17, 18.
Verbal Victor is getting a real-world test at the Children's Center in Winston-Salem, where Victor attends with other special needs children.
Do you want to read the book? Yes or no? Tell me. Yes. You do?
This is my first experience with the Verbal Victor app. It is very easy to use. Victor brought it with him the first day of school, and his father taught me how to use it, and we've been using it every day since then.
Are you ready to play? Yes. Good job.
Verbal Victor is more than a labor of love. It was here at North Carolina's Wake Forest University where Dr. Pal Pauka developed software that would enable him to communicate with his son and let his son communicate with the rest of the world.
Okay, so here, this is what we call in the thread.
The success of Verbal Victor has brought new purpose to his life as a scientist.
It has given a brand new component to my work, to my research. But having a direct impact in society has given me a goal that, frankly didn't quite have before. What we want to do is I want to be able to select one of these buttons with my head without having to touch it. So typically you would touch on these buttons, right? But if you don't have hands, you would like to use your head to do that.
In his lab at Wake Forest University, Paul and his team of computer scientists are pushing the development of Verbal Victor using face recognition software.
We are thinking of different versions of Verbal Victor that would help other people. So people with stroke, people with ALS, different communication needs. No? Well then, how about we do a drink? We do a drink. Juice. Juice. Okay.
It's hard for a person to feel like they don't have any control over their life, and so this enables Victor to make choices and let us know what he wants and to be able to feel good about himself, that he can decide things for himself too.
We're helping so many more people with the app, and none of it would be possible if it wasn't for Victor. I take Victor to school every morning. The first thing he does is he hears the birds, he looks at the flowers, touches them, and it's a lesson to make you realize that that's what matters every day, is that happiness. Maybe we wouldn't appreciate it, if it wasn't for him.
We end our show here in Berkeley, where producer Roberto Daza investigates pioneering research that gives us a unique look inside the human brain and how we see the world.
It's the stuff of science fiction. Mind reading. The power of the human brain has long captured the imaginations of Hollywood.
I'm gonna read your thoughts. Doc.
But as scientists learn more about how the mind works, it could become a reality. At UC Berkeley, Professor Jack Gallant and his team of researchers are in the early stages of piecing together how the mind perceives the world. It turns out, it's a lot like watching a movie.
You walk around the world and you're moving your head and your eyes around and you're looking at scenes, but in some sense you're really just watching a movie of the world going by.
But what if the movies in your mind could be shared with someone else? Gallant's team did just that. They showed movie trailers to subjects inside this fMRI machine, a scanner designed to measure blood flow in the brain.
You can see there's some brain activity. This is the brain activity elicited by this movie, and red means more activity and blue means less activity.
They focused on the primary visual cortex, a part of the brain used to process general shapes, textures, and movement.
We want to essentially build a dictionary that translates between things that happen in the world and these different parts of your brain and how they respond.
Once they built the dictionary, they used it to comb through thousands of hours of video from YouTube, blending together the frames that matched best with their results. This allowed them to make a rough reconstruction of the movies the subjects saw. The images are far from perfect.
The contours, it knows there's a bright vertical thing with a thing sticking out of it.
But they've been getting attention from scientists and the public alike. They posted their results online and got more than 1 million views in less than 3 days.
It showed that people actually do care about science and they do care about trying to understand the way the brain works. Some people who saw the video thought, wow, this is wonderful, science is progressing, this is so neat, you can use this for a million things. Some people saw the video and said, oh my God, this is very scary and frightening and people shouldn't do this.
But he says critics should know that their work is far from invading your thoughts.
We're not doing mind reading here. We're not really peering into your brain and reconstructing pictures in your head. We're reading your brain activity and using that brain activity to reconstruct what you saw. And those are two very, very different things.
Also, the equipment needed for fMRI costs millions and weighs several tons, making it unlikely to be used outside of a hospital or research setting.
At some point in the future, people will come up with other methods of measuring brain activity that are more direct and are much more accurate.
But not everyone is waiting for the next breakthrough. Some companies have adapted a simpler, more stripped-down approach: electroencephalography, or EEG.
Unlike the big, expensive equipment needed for fMRI, the EEG technology used here at NeuroSky is smaller, cheaper, and ready for mainstream use.
In the last 10 years, EEG has evolved from a dedicated room with a huge processing box, a statistician that had to go through all of the signal readings, and distilled it into a $99 device.
EEG converts the electrical impulses of the brain into patterns that can be seen on a computer. It's less precise than fMRI, but it can provide a glimpse of the overall mood of the brain, or what are called dominant mental states.
Those can be, are you paying a high level of attention? Are you in a deep state of relaxation?
It turns out that metric, attention and relaxation, provides enough feedback for a wide range of mind-powered applications, mostly in entertainment and games.
So we're actually going to battle our minds against each other.
Begin. Here, your level of concentration pushes the ball toward your opponent. When it reaches the other side, you win.
Vanquished.
Player 2 wins. This is what we do here.
Some games are designed to help people de-stress and meditate. Others can help children with disorders like ADHD learn to focus their minds.
Focus Pocus is the world's first ADHD training game that uses brainwave feedback to augment the child's learning.
So we don't really see this as a replacement for the current medical and research technologies, but there's a lot of more serious applications. So for example, early diagnosis of Alzheimer's, going into a doctor's lab, and just like we check your weight and your blood pressure now, being able to tell if your brainwaves look healthy. Also for things like PTSD, post-traumatic stress, and traumatic brain injury.
But along with its potential, EEG has its own limitations.
The signal is very, very small, and it can be easily contaminated by things like sweating or blinking. The quality of the data in EEG is much, much worse than the quality of data in fMRI.
But this isn't stopping companies like NeuroSky and others like it from cashing in on these gadgets.
So there are many companies out there trying to make brain activity recording devices that are portable and cheap and that can be used by just normal people in their daily lives. And I think that's great, because these cheaper technologies will allow us to apply them to a much wider range of problems.
These advances in neuroscience are setting the stage for new applications that may soon improve our lives.
And then this white line here is actually your level of focus.
And as these technologies evolve at the juncture between machines and the mind, our idea of science fiction may not be so far-fetched after all.
If only I could do it in real life, then I'd be an X-Men.
That's it for this edition of Shortcuts. Sometime before we graduate, we promise to have another collection of stories from Mexico, India, Uganda, and even the East Bay. Thanks for watching.
You wait for the door to close.
Rolling.
Okay.
So wait, when should I say it at the top? That's it for this? No name at all?
Yes.
No
I
name.
don't think you say it. I met you at the beginning of the show.
Yeah.
3,
Then they all know me.
2.
3, 2, 1.
Okay. Sorry. Here we go. Okay. Bob, do me the cue. Want to give me the cue again? Yeah. 3, 2, 1. That's it for this edition of Shortcuts. Thanks for watching. Sometime before we graduate, we promise to have another collection of stories from India. Somewhere, where is it? Mexico? There's so many. Uganda, Mexico, El Salvador, Detroit, and even the East Bay?
Yeah, that's something like that.
You don't have to say all of it.